I'm beginning to see a swing in the bell curve. Women are starting to speak up and know their worth. That's the thing. Know how valuable you are. Hello, hello.
Yeah, now that we're starting. All right. Hello, bold and beautiful people. Welcome to the Bravery Path, a show dedicated to guiding you on a kick-ass expedition towards a life of fearless authenticity, self-discovery, and boundless potential. Our topic today is a woman's pioneering journey in the Canadian music scene. And I'm super excited to interview this guest. She's a pivotal figure in the music industry. Oh my gosh, and orchestrated the formation of the Skylark band and played a crucial role in securing their Capitol Records deal, which catapulted both the band's hit song Wildflower and David Foster's career to global recognition.
Hey,
Just small. Yeah. So at 81, BJ Cook continues to rock on as a powerhouse songwriter with an inspiring journey worth sharing. So please join me on welcoming the remarkable BJ Cook.
hi there.
So pumped to have you on today. This is really exciting.
Oh, no, this has been a fun day so far. Should we tell them what we were doing first?
No,
Okay.
we'll just keep that on the.
Okay.
Shh.
Okay.
All right. So I'm just curious, what inspired you to enter into the music industry, especially around a time when it was less diverse? I think about what is like 1950s?
In the late 50s, yeah.
The late 50s.
I think I started sometime in the mid 50s. I'm really bad at math. I think I got my first gig when I was 15. So I was born in 1942. So whatever year that was. I was young, but I got paid. And after that, school wasn't interesting. First of all, let me go back and say I had a learning disability, which I didn't know about.
Okay.
When I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, I was dyslexic," I'm seriously dyslexic. My children, my grandchildren, I passed it on to everybody. And back then, you went to school, you were 6 years old, we were all put in the same category, and nobody was recognized to have anything wrong with them. And so I sat in the dumb, they used to put you according to your school, your test, the dumb one at the end,
Oh, Lord.
and it snaked like this up to the smart one. And I was always in the dumb row. And but thank God I was an extrovert and a show off. And I'd been in dance class since I was 3. And I wasn't about to get, I don't know what, even at that age, in grade 6, I guess you're in grade 1, right? But I was compelled to show off and get up and do
Being on the
stuff. And
stage, more of a
yeah, and when you're labeled as the dumb, you're in the dumb row, and kids are mean. So you're called, if you're in the dumb row, you're called the dummy or
Yeah.
something all the time. So I had to somehow, in my mind, I guess I reconciled being called names with, yeah, I might be dumb, but look what I can do, right? That's not how it was. And of course, I didn't come from a family, and this has nothing to do with my parents. And I don't ever want to ever think that anybody thinks I'm talking badly about them, but they were both my dad was told at 13 that he had to be a plumber. So he was removed from school.
Okay.
And my mom was 9. And she was the eldest of 10 children. They eventually had 10 kids, and she was the eldest of all of them. So her father had to take her out of school, and she worked in Shaughnessy in Vancouver. And that's where all the rich Jewish people lived. And they were the only ones that could afford servants. And so my mom was a scullery maid in Shaughnessy. And yeah.
And you're from Victoria.
Yeah, but yeah, I was born in Vancouver, but I'm adopted, and they brought me over here when I was a baby.
Okay.
So I'm from Victoria. I'm an island girl.
Island girls.
Absolutely.
And we were talking about how much it would have been so different back in that decade. The island, it's such a beautiful place here, but
I have to tell you that when I was 15 years old, there was a club on Wharf Street called The Scene. It was a jazz club.
okay.
And all the top jazz musicians that were from anywhere, if they were from LA and playing in Vancouver, they'd come over to The Scene. So I, at 15 years old, I got exposed to some of the best musicians in the country. And I had no idea that they were the creme de la creme. I just liked the music. And the first time I ever decided I wanted to be a singer, I walked in. You have to be 21, by the way, to get into the
Right.
bars. So I walked in. It was all on one level. You didn't have to go upstairs or downstairs. It was all on one level.
Mhm.
And there was a stage right here and a blue spotlight and a girl sitting on a stool singing, "There's a somebody I'm longing to see." And I went, that's it. That's me.
Lights on.
That's me. That's what I want to do, right? I became a singer.
All
And
right.
and that was she inspired me. I became friends with her. Her name was Peggy Baker. And she was really a cool. I always gravitated to smart older dames. And no, I didn't go to school, so I had to learn.
And you didn't have any musical influence at family or home to be
Well,
that?
I have to say honestly that when I was a kid, I had my mom's sister, Eileen, was her grandkids called her All Night Nana. And she would party. And she was she was this warm, outgoing, total opposite to my mom.
Yeah.
But she would welcome anyone to her house. And on Saturday nights, you went to Eileen's to party. And my dad once a month would let me stay over at Annie I's because he knew that I'd be up all night and I'd be hanging out, right?
Mhm.
But the first time I ever heard harmony or any kind of music and people singing together and guys playing the spoons, I was fascinated with that, just absolutely fascinated. And that's when I first heard harmony. So I guess that was my first influence.
You're in the environment.
Yeah.
It did make an impact.
And then when I was about 9 or 10, they were doing a radio show. I don't remember. It was like CKDA or whatever it was in Victoria. And it was Easter and they wanted someone to sing, "Here Comes Peter Cottontail." So I think I was like 9 and I was on the radio and I thought, hey. And I'd been dancing on stage since I was a kid. Didn't really think about anything else and didn't think I was smart enough. I didn't have an education, so I had to do something. And singing seemed logical.
It sounds like you really loved it.
I did. I did love it. I did. Yeah.
Are there any challenges that you faced as a young woman early in your career and how you navigated them?
I have to tell you that I've been asked that in a couple of interviews. They say, what was it like to be a woman? And back then, but didn't think of myself. I was one of the guys, maybe because I grew up in a neighborhood in Esquimalt where I was the only girl. And they're all, when I was 5 and 6 and 7, before we moved to my parents' house that they lived in for 35 years and all that, we lived in Esquimalt in an apartment. And all the kids I hung out with were boys. And so I was more at home with boys, and I liked their philosophy more. Girls always want to be mummies and play dolls and do tea and all that stuff. And I thought, oh, I don't want to do that. I still have that scar right there from playing in the bushes and we had to play war. And it's so weird.
I was a bit of a tomboy too, so I resonate. I understand.
Yeah, I was a tomboy. And so when I got in my first band, it was all guys again. So and then I thought, okay, now that's why this Me Too thing and all this thing about how dare you talk like that in front of me. I would have had a job for 10 seconds if I had been one of the, how dare you say that in front of me? Different times. Are you kidding me? No, what I did was I became more foul-mouthed.
And you're fun. You're very much, no, you don't get by me.
I'm like, if you want to say something dirty, I'll tell you something dirtier. So that's how I got their respect, number one. That's weird.
I've always found you quite candid. And I appreciate that about you. It's best. Just talk real talk. Straight shooter.
At the time for all that bullshit anyways. And it's true. Say what's on your mind. Now that when I'm going to be 82 years old in July,
and fabulous.
And I think that now when people say, "Oh my God, I don't think of myself as 82. I don't wake up and say, "Oh my God, I'm 82." I don't think of my age.
You have a very light-hearted spirit, and you're very
and I can still do this. Right?
You have to keep that flexibility.
That's right. No, I'm very flexible. I don't work out. I've got a treadmill upstairs and I get on it once in a while. I stretch and I sit in my chair and
Good for you.
I do all that stuff, but I went to gyms. Went and power walked. I did all that stuff.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Just enjoying life, doing the things that make you feel good. And it seems to be working just
okay. I think about the Queen Mom. What was she, 104 when she died? She smoked. She drank. You ever think she got on a treadmill or anything? But like I say, the day you're born, you get a map and a number. That's how I feel about it. And if you stay on course with your map, you usually become either happy or successful or but it's the ones that don't pay any attention to your map. And because it's all up here, right from wrong and blah, blah, blah. But when your number's up, period. And it doesn't, Linda McCartney taught me that. Paul, I don't know her. So I'm not saying I knew, but she was the most anal human being about everything had to be macrobiotic and pure, and the soil was all tilled. She was all organic and the kids were all organic, and she died at 46 of breast cancer. So it doesn't make any difference. Like I said, you might have a plan. So holding back and thinking, oh no, I don't want to do that, doesn't make any difference because it's already foreseen. Your destiny is there.
You live life to the fullest.
Exactly.
I'm sure there's still take some precautions within reason.
Absolutely.
But don't feel so overly rigid. You got a lot to share in that if you're 80, almost 82. So I think at this chapter, just keep your hair down. Don't overly think things. Yeah.
Absolutely. Because there's nothing, and especially the past is something that you have absolutely no control over what has happened. So when you think about the past all the time, oh my God, I shouldn't have, oh my God, it doesn't matter. It's done. It's done now. So now either live with the consequence and figure out how to live with that.
Yeah.
Or just say big deal. It's just part of life. Am I allowed to say the F word? Because I might say it. I'm
not quite sure. It's like the vibe. I might have some younger ones. There might be a cute little
little
crickets.
Okay. Oh no. Then I won't swear.
I want you to be you, BJ. I want you to be
okay. Well, that's a good word for many things. But
I've heard some funny jokes. It's amazing. There was a joke I heard. It's like, oh, it's for apathy or anger or joy.
It does. It's a great word. I can remember being a kid. Or maybe it was me, and Amy and I, it was me and Amy and I, my daughter Amy, and we were living in LA, and the word the letters FUCK in huge big black letters were on a fence. And I did this to Amy. I said, oh, don't look at it. Of course, she's 50 years old now, so it's a different time.
Different time.
Yeah, different time.
Were there any specific parts in your journey where you felt you need to be particularly brave, or you had some big courageous move that you needed to make?
Well,
share some of those.
Moving from Victoria to Vancouver. Back then. By the way, you used to be able to fly for $5 on a.
Can't even get a Starbucks coffee for $5.
You used to be able to fly to Vancouver on a real airplane. Go to the airport, get on the plane, go to Vancouver for $5 and come back for $5.
Sometimes I just want to go back in time.
Yes, I know. When I think about that, I think that can't be right. But it was crazy. Okay, I had my first daughter. I was not on the papers that I had to sign when she was born. She was classed as illegitimate child. It actually had on the form that I filled out that for her on her birth form.
Which daughter?
My oldest daughter.
Oldest daughter.
Yeah.
Okay. So you had a daughter before Amy.
I had a daughter a month after, 4 weeks after I turned 17. Okay. And it was 1959. And it was the most scandalous thing that ever happened and to anybody in our neighborhood. A lot of girls got pregnant and a lot of girls had kids, but they either aborted them or they gave them away. And I had found out I was adopted. Was about 7 or 8 months pregnant. And I just decided that this little person growing inside of me, I wanted her. This was my family. I felt there was no other. And I have to say this in honor of my father. When my dad, I was about 5 months pregnant when my dad, and I was still 16 at this point. And my father was so hurt and just not disappointed, but he just felt so bad for me. And he asked me if I wanted to marry the father of this baby. And get married. Oh my God. No, thank you. I said, no, I don't like him and I don't want to see him again. I'm not interested in being with him. And my dad said, okay, then we will raise this baby. She will be our baby. And cool with me. That's great. And there was never any shame or nothing. It was, they loved her and they, right from day one, when I brought her home from the hospital,
That's
my
very
dad
special that
became
they're
her father. And so that's why she wasn't really in a great hurry to find her biological father or know who he was even. She didn't even ask about that. But it was a very difficult time. People think that I'm making it up. Dog crap, they put bags of dog poop in bags and leave it at our door. My mom woke up we got up one morning and written in white shoe polish all over our front windows were horrible, obscene things about me and what I most likely did and had done. And some of those things I'd never even heard of. I literally, and my mother got out with the hose and hosed it was
What
just
a different
terrible.
time.
It was just ridiculous. Now my daughter's a year old. I'm 18 and this band comes to town and they're really a great band from Vancouver. Can't remember the name of them, but they all came down to the club I was singing at after hours down somewhere on Wharf Street. But you went down into it. It was a weird place. I can't remember where it was or anything about it, but it was downstairs. And I was singing, and when the set was over, the guy came over and said to me, "Hi, my name's Jack Allen. I'm a drummer. I play with songs. I just want to tell you, you shouldn't be living here. You should be in Vancouver. You could get work over there. You're a really good singer." And I said, I can't go to Vancouver. I got a kid. I can't just take off. So he said, how about if I talk to your parents? And I said, what? And he said, no, I'm serious. I'd like you to come over there. I think
You
you'll.
definitely saw something in him.
Yeah.
It was just like, yeah.
So I said, okay. So the next day he came to my house and he talked to mom and dad. And he said, look, I can't offer her, I'm not offering her a job. I play in a band, but I think I can really help her. And he said, I have a girlfriend. I've always had a girlfriend and she can stay at my parents' house. That's what he told my parents. I did stay at his parents' house, but they didn't know I was down there. They had a room down there and he snuck me in, but he was taking me around. He didn't try anything with me. It wasn't any kind of sexual thing. He just thought I was a nice kid and I deserved a break. And I was there primarily to find my biological mother because I knew she lived in Vancouver. So that was my real reason.
So interesting with the threads that we can follow where it's a yes or no. You talked about destiny and what's going to happen will happen. It's already been laid out, but you still have this element of choice. And that's part of the fun where I'm like, I could have gone through the store. I could have chosen to stay home, take care of the baby and figure out whatever the next step is. And maybe another opportunity would come down, but probably reflecting. I'm sure you've done a lot of reflecting. I was like, oh, this guy did this and then that bridge to this. And then I was thinking of looking for my mom. And then I got this opportunity as a singer. And that was the thing that you desired energetically when you were a kid. And so now this platform of opportunity was being set up.
I told you I knew my father my whole life. He was my Uncle Gordon. And I grew up with him but until he died. He died very young.
But he told me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
She's got so many cool stories. Like, that's
okay.
with the tracking.
So, my mom had a lot of brothers, and one of them, his name was Gordon, and he was very handsome. I'll show you the pictures; they're all over there.
Okay,
very handsome guy, but he was our least favorite. He was a fop, as they used to say back, and he wanted cashmere coats, and he was just one of those guys. And every time he sat down on anything, he'd brush off the seat and everything. He was one of those. So. When he'd come around, my dad would just roll his eyes and go, "Oh my gosh!" So to find out that he was the one of all my uncles, I was
It
not,
was your
yeah,
biological father.
he was my biological father. And then I wanted to know who my mother was. And nobody was really talking too much about it. So
Mhm.
I knew something, there was a reason why they weren't telling me. And then I went to Vancouver and I found out. And for all the people listening, it sounds like I'm making all this stuff up, but honest to God, this is my real life. My mother, my mother, I don't like to refer to her as mother. Bio I call her, was the definitive madam in Vancouver when I moved there.
Okay.
So you have to understand that even though I had a baby, I had no sexual experience and I didn't really know that much about life or sex or anything. All I wanted to do was be a singer. I didn't really care about the rest of it that much. Okay. She did a very smart thing. She only had about 7 girls working for her, but they were the kind of girls that when the high paid actors and high paid athletes would come to town,
Okay.
they'd get one of my mom's girls for a couple of grand, like an escort,
Yeah.
basically, with benefits. And I'd never heard of anything like that in my life. And I was enticed by it. I thought, hey, I don't look too bad. And I got a nice figure and I'm young and everything. So my bio mama was very smart because she put me on the phones. And she said, okay, if you want to be in the business, start at the bottom and I'll let you answer the phones.
Okay.
And I answered the phones for a week. No, not even a week, maybe 3 days. And I was never so disgusted in my entire life. I heard things that were requested for that I never dreamed of in a million years. And so I decided that definitely wasn't the life for
There
me.
wasn't.
No. And as it turns out, 35 years later, I found out that I had a sister. And she's half
Okay.
Chinese and she lives in Vancouver. And she met our mother many years. I was 53 and she was 49
Oh, okay.
when we met. And she wanted a relationship with her. My biological mother's name is Vicky, and she wanted a relationship with Vicky, and I did not. I told Vicky, I said, look, I have parents. I have a mother. I don't need to be in your life. I don't never wanted to be in your life. So she likes you and she wants to be in your life. So you guys carry on. So my sister they changed the will and I ended up with nothing, but I didn't even care. I didn't even care. It was part of my life it didn't matter to me.
So that's fascinating. It's
Isn't it?
interesting when I think
It's a
about the
movie.
connection.
I'm
It is a
telling you,
movie. It is
it's
a movie. So I'm just piecing this together. Okay. So you moved to Vancouver. You got this opportunity because he loved your voice, this guy. And
Yeah.
what was the next thing? You met your mom, and then shortly after that, you started having.
Okay, and that's when I met Tommy Chong from Cheech and Chong. He was in a band called the Calgary Shades, and they had just moved. He was the guitar player in the band, and I met him at a party,
Mhm.
and the party was it was actually at the place that I was staying at,
Okay.
and they came to the party, and the place was such a pigsty that they didn't even stay. But I met Tommy. We talked that night. He said, you're cute. What are you doing around here? And I said, oh, I'm a singer. I'm over here I said, do you have a band? And he said, yeah. And I said, I'm a singer. And he said, well, that's nice. See ya. And so Tommy went, and so Tommy and I talk about it all the time. I've met him. He was probably the first musician that I actually met in Vancouver. And he was a good player and always had a good band. And then I met a guy, he introduced me to a guy named Henry Young, who still plays and a guitar player, played with Nina Simone for about 3 years on the road. Really good player, really great guy. Still calls me every Christmas, every birthday. He and his wife call. He gave me my first gig. I don't remember. I think I have a picture of it somewhere, but it was on stage. And I know I've got pointed shoes. I got high heels on and the toes look that long. My feet look like they're this long. I had a very big long pointed, and I had an A-line here dress and back combed hair, and oh my God. Yeah. And then I actually got my first job. I forgot to tell you this part. Vicky, biological, knew the owner of the big supper club in Vancouver called The Cave. And oh my God, what a joint this was. It looked like the inside of a cave. It was absolutely beautiful. And all the major acts in the world that played Vegas broke their acts in at the Cave.
Okay.
So Sammy Davis Jr., Ella Fitzgerald, Frank Sinatra, all of them all came to the Cave. And I got a job. Vicky called up Ken Stauffer, who owned the Cave, and said, hey, look, and I've got this long-legged kid here. She wants to be in show business. And they said, oh, we're looking for showgirls. And there was no nudity involved. You wore beautiful, it was like the Ziegfeld Follies with the gorgeous gowns. And so 2 girls opened the show, 16-piece orchestra, huge,
giant feather boas.
like big stage. So I walked out with the headdress and the thing. We walk out, and then the 6 dancers come out. And then there was always a comedian and then a headliner. And that was the show. I worked with Della Reese and Nancy Wilson and Marty Robb, Johnny Cash, another story.
Come on. Another story. Here all day. I've got all these fun stories.
No, this is a true story, though. I had to go and actually, the guy, there's a video out called My Father and the Man in Black. It's a book and it's a video. And the guy that made the video, Jonathan, searched me down and found me because the book and the story, called My Father, his father was Johnny Cash's manager for 36 years. Okay. Holoff is their last name. Saul Holoff. And it's a great movie. It's a great documentary. You got to see it. It's so good. They almost had this part that I played in it, but they left it out because it was written when they did the screenplay. They're playing The Cave. It's early 60s, maybe not. I don't know what year. You could probably go online and find out. He was playing The Cave, Johnny Cash. Star's dressing room. No, upstairs were giant stage, and you could walk all around the back of the stage. The dancers and the musicians were on this side, and you could walk all the way around. Okay. And the showgirls and the star was on this side. Okay. So we got all our finery on, our costume. And of course, they made everything with bones, and they put this bone on so that you had this enormous breasts, which I didn't. So you stuffed toilet paper and socks and underpants and everything inside of your.
You get a little extra zhuzh in there.
It all in. So I tuck it all in. And then we got this headdress. It's got this great big thing with all this plumage and stuff coming this way. And instead of back then, they didn't put the thing under your neck. They had the wide band.
Ooh, that's a lot of weight.
And and so you can't do this. You have to keep your head perfectly straight, right? So when you sit on something, you can't sit. You have to. So the makeup table, they knocked on the door and they said, Mr. Cash would like you to come over and meet him, as he'd like to say hello to you. And so we both looked at each other and we went, Johnny Cash? Because we didn't, what the hell? So I thought, Johnny Cash? How weird. So we go over and we have to duck down to get in the room. And the dressing table was here with all the lights all around.
Yep.
And then right behind the dressing table was this beautiful, a little settee like this. And so we sat with our backs to the mirror, put our bums on the makeup table, and sat and talked to him. And I was sitting up on this makeup table. You can't put your head down. You can't really talk to anybody. You can't. It's not comfortable, right? So we're trying to make conversation. Meanwhile, he's gouged out of his brains because that's when he was stoned all the time on these pills. I thought he was drunk, right? I didn't know anything. And so
You're still just a teenager here at this time.
I've got my legs crossed and he asked me something and I answer him and he thinks I called him a queer or a fag. I don't know what the vernacular was back then, but he thought I called him a queer and he reached down and grabbed my ankle and yanked me like this. What? So I slid all the way down the table, smashed my head. The thing came off. All the stuffing that was in my bra fell all over the floor. And so the girl that I'm with, Patricia, is standing like this. And so Saul, of course, comes running over and helps me up. And everyone's stuffing all this stuff. I have to go on. I'm opening the show, right? And he'd scraped my back, ripped half my hair out, putting this thing on, right? So I had to, and then all of a sudden I had a team of people wheeling me downstairs, getting ready for my intro to come on stage. Yeah,
nothing happened.
Right. So I'm still stunned from all this. Now, when I think about it, I could have made millions off that. So that's what Saul, his son, came looking for me. He said, I heard there was a girl in Victoria who Johnny Cash attacked in the dressing room. And so Jonathan, called me for months and texted me. And I thought, he kept talking about Johnny Cash. And I said, what is this guy? I don't know Johnny Cash. He didn't say why he wanted to. He just said, I'd like to talk to you, referring to Johnny Cash. And I went, what? I don't know Johnny Cash. I'm not. And I totally ignored the guy. And then so finally, he knew somebody that I knew who called me and said, look at this guy's legitimate. He wants to talk to you. So the reason he wanted to talk to me and get to know me was his father, when he left Johnny Cash, moved to Victoria, to Souk, and went to the University of Victoria and got a whole bunch of degrees or something. And when he died, this is how the movie is. The movie starts off with this guy walking across the room and putting some keys in a drawer. And those keys, when Jonathan opened to the locker, everything that Johnny Cash ever had or ate or wrote on, and his dad kept a journal. His dad wrote everything about Johnny and June and everybody in this thing. And the locker was filled with all the platinum, the gold records, everything that Johnny Cash ever had.
Giant time capsule.
And so he gave all that to the University of Victoria. And they wanted me to get up in front of this huge crowd that they gathered while they made this dedication to tell this story about him. And I said, no. I said, people are Johnny Cash fans. They're not gonna want to hear about all that. So I cleaned it up a little bit and made it not.
So this is not that long ago.
No, it was just a couple of years ago.
Oh, not like from back in the past. What are you about? You never know.
No, yeah.
That's wild. Okay, so you've had a pretty illustrious forward with your songwriting career, and I remember with Wildflower and learning about that when I was a kid and still hearing it on the radio. I was just looking up how many people have covered that song.
Lots. And even Tupac and Kanye and all that. Like, no, the songwriters, the people that wrote Wildflower, Doug Edwards was our guitar player in Skylark. And David Foster's best friend was a cop named Dave Richardson, and he wrote those words.
He grew up with his kids.
Yeah. I know. It's unbelievable.
This is really fun for me years later to actually getting more of the full backstory of everything.
There's so many stories about how it got written. Dave brought over a stack of poems that they're poems. He called them poems. And Doug just felt like writing one night. And he went randomly through the lyric and he came across Wildflower. And I think he said he wrote it in 20 minutes. he said it just spoke to him. It's one of
Just
those
channeled as well, those
yeah,
things. Yeah.
he just sang it. And what's funny, we never, it's a beautiful song. And Donnie Gerard, whose shirt I'm
Just
wearing,
representing.
Donnie Gerard, to me, the greatest. Okay, here's another thing that a lot of people don't realize. When we were signed to Capitol Records in the States, in LA, they had no black, we were the only black people ever signed to Capitol Records at that time. They had to bring a guy up from the mailroom or something and make an actual office for R&B. They didn't, there was, think about it. I nearly fainted when I heard that. I said, that was only 1973 or 72 when we signed with them. And there was still that much segregation. And because Myra, Donnie's wife, worked at Capitol Records in an executive position.
Okay.
She was the president's executive secretary. And that's another story. We walked in, Donnie and I walked in, we opened the elevator, we're on the executive floor. Myra's sitting at her desk, and Donnie Gerard fell in love with her at that second. And they were together for over 50 years.
Oh, wow.
Oh, I know. They were just
lightning struck.
Yeah. But Donnie Gerard, and not only that, we never got airplay at all in Canada because they didn't have black people on the radio. And we didn't get airplay. So they wouldn't. So the truth, this is how we got airplay. Another
like
woman,
Cinderella story, like
celebrating, her name is Rosalie Tromley. They just built a statue in her hometown, Windsor, overlooking Detroit. She was a power woman back in the day. She was the head of music and programming and everything for one of the major radio stations, and that just never happened. And she had 3 kids. She was a single mom. She came home from work, poured a glass of wine, put her feet up, and she turned on the Detroit radio station that she used to get a lot of her people that she had never heard of. The black radio stations were playing them way before. And she's got her feet up, got her head back, and they put Wildflower on. She's faced the hardest times you could imagine. And many times her eyes fought back the tears. And when her youthful world was about to fall in, each time her slender shoulders bore the weight of all her fear, and a sorrow no one hears still rings in midnight silence in her ears. And she sobbed and she went, "Oh my God, who is this? Who is it?" And then she finds out it's a Canadian group. And we weren't getting any airplay at all, none. The next day, she put it on her playlist and said, "I want this." And she alone is responsible for us having airplay.
Wow.
So I always want to.
And then the rest.
And I drink to you, Rosalie. We lost her too. She went to the land of dementia, and she was just the most powerful, brilliant woman. And when I think about it, I've had advice and guidance all of my whole life because of the babes I know. Powerful women and women who aren't afraid. And I don't think that many are these days. I'm beginning to see a swing in the bell curve. We're not seeing so many victims as we were. Women are starting to speak up and know their worth. That's the thing. Know how valuable you are. And I don't have any regrets. I've got 2 beautiful, healthy daughters. I've got grandkids, and I've got now 2 great grandkids. And the beat goes on.
Beautiful family.
Yeah. Beautiful
really cool
family.
with the legacy.
Yeah.
And what achievements stand out to you as personal victories? Maybe just contributions to expanding opportunities in music, just anything that maybe wasn't necessarily.
I learned something really important. I went to one of my oldest and dearest friends, killer bass player, played with Alice Cooper. I know I sound like I'm name dropping, but you would not know these names if I don't tell you who they are. His name is Prakash John. And he's this brilliant guy, played with Lou Reed, the Funkadelics. He had a band called the Lincolns. and they played at Gretzky's wedding. So you Canadians will know that. Anyways, his son, one of the best singers I've ever heard, and writes, plays everything. And I was just there in June of this past year. And I sat down with his son and I just belly ached about the lack of what happens to kids. I mentored all those kids at Vic High all those years, and I always felt I know. And you know what? I know I feel so damn guilty because you see the hunger and the desire. They're just burning to, and do what? There's not. So Jordan explained something to me, Jordan John, Prakash's son. They have these rooms now that in your house, they're called content rooms. And in that room, you have great lighting, you have great sound, you have great everything, and you do your own thing in your content room. And he told me about this underground movement that's happening in the music industry. And I got my heart swelled because he said, these underground acts that go on TikTok and all they do is just say, okay, I'm dropping a single on Tuesday. And then 2 weeks later, I'm hitting Chicago. See you there. And they make $1 million on just their fans who are all these underground people. So this is what I'm saying. In my day and yours as well, you had to depend on somebody. There were A&R guys and record guys, and somebody had to do this and press and all that. All that, those people have been eliminated. And if you truly want to be in the music industry today, it's up to you. No one's going to do it. You have to make your stuff so good that when you put it on TikTok, because David Foster told me 10 years ago that the scouts are always on TikTok, all the YouTube, everything. All record companies have scouts on everything. And every singer on The Voice and every singer on America's Got Talent and American, whatever the other one is.
X Factor.
Yeah, what is it? American Idol.
Yeah,
and The Voice and America's Got Talent. Those are the only 3 places. And every one of the singers and most of the acts are from TikTok that go on those shows. So it's because they've had 300, 500,000 hits or something. And oh my God, this person must be worthy of at least auditioning.
They want to see social proof.
Yeah,
and being able to.
that's right.
So the nice thing with that is you have control.
That's right. And back in my day, somebody took control of all that stuff. You know that when we released Skylark, we owed the record company $113,000 because everything that they were giving us, we didn't realize we had to pay it back. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that I'm telling anyone who's listening or cares that much, the only people that make money in the music industry are the writers. If you don't write, you're not going to make any. And nobody just makes a living singing somebody else's song. Celine, and that's why Michael Bublé started writing. Mm-hmm. Bruce Allen said, "You're singing your arse off, and you're getting but you're not getting you're singing other people's material." So that's my daughter. The first time out, she wrote a song with anybody. She had it home. She wrote, and then Blake, whatever his name is, the country guy, Sheldon.
Sheldon. She's had a few really big ones that I think of with Michael Bublé. And
I Just Haven't Met You Yet. And
I Just Haven't Met You Yet. And it was home.
And
I want to go home.
Yeah. And everything. The other thing. He had 3 hits at number 1. And the other one.
Did she do something for Josh Groban too?
She did what?
Was she writing for? I'm just thinking of
who?
Josh. Was it Josh?
Josh Groban. She has a song in his album. She wrote with him. She has a song on Andrea. Destiny's Child. She wrote it.
Oh wow. Okay.
But she didn't get any joy from writing songs. She wanted to write books and be an author. So she's got a few books out, and I'm all I can say is I'm sorry she gave up songwriting.
She's got her creative path, and she's had a lot of
yeah. She's living a lot of her life in Iceland.
Iceland. Oh, there's Icelandic.
I know.
So it's a fun place in my heart. performing in Iceland.
Hey, I'm not kidding.
They sound like elfish there. Have you heard them speak? Welcome to Iceland. Yuck. They speak on like on the
No,
inhale, the exhale.
no.
Welcome to Iceland, school, yuck.
Oh my God.
It's very really like Lord of the Rings.
It's very expensive there.
It is. It is. It was outrageous when I went there
And you
years ago.
can't buy anything unless you're
So
Icelandic.
she must just the landscape. It feels the most exotic, non-tropical place I've ever been to. The air is so clean.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. There are perks. There are.
But not only that, but they're very innovative and
Yes.
very progressive. They in Iceland were the scientists that invented this new $1 billion thing everyone's putting in their country because they can suck the toxins out of the air. They put these giant things up, and it's a big deal.
I'm learning
Huge.
more. I just know they're
How I know that cute little hunky guy called Zac Efron.
yeah.
He has
When
a-
you went there into this documentary
well,
series.
he does
right?
this series
Yeah.
and they went to Iceland, and I'd never heard of Iceland. I knew what Iceland was, but I didn't really know anything about Iceland. How progressive and how fabulous! Really cool place. And you're Icelandic.
Yeah.
I'm the only one I've ever known.
They didn't know how well. I'm third generation Canadian, so when I was 18, I had a scholarship program. There was a heritage program I went on, and then my parents were insisting that I put my first album when I opened for Nelly Furtado when I was 15, put it in the package. But I'm like, why? That's not even relevant. She's like, just do it. I am getting a phone call that the project manager from the group wanted to be my Icelandic agent, and I got to be the first international artist to perform for their Independence Day. I was by myself, tens of thousands of people with this. You had a Euro. What was that big thing? Eurovision?
Yeah.
Yeah, there are artists back to, oh, foreigner. You're on next. No sound check. I run up on stage. I've got maybe a little keyboard, tiny little amp, and I speak in Icelandic because I did like a little crash course on it. And I went, all right, I'm now. And then they zipped me over I went to the president's house. Oh, this really cool thing. I was 18, but they didn't know how to pronounce my name. So because when you're born there, I'll just like tiny little side. So forgive me. I know it's side note.
Cool.
Okay. So Rachelle, my first name, I go by Ray with a nickname, but my first name, they don't have that in their Icelandic vocabulary. But,
Right.
So it's Rachel. Okay. Closest thing is Rachel. And then Gislason, my last name, if you're born there, you have dotir for daughter, and it's the father's first name tradition. They're pretty inclusive with women can do this too, but traditionally it'd be Grant, like my dad's name, Grant's dotir would be. So Rakagis, what did they call me? They didn't know my father's first name, but they just started on radio interviews. So
But what's his real name? His name even Grant, wasn't he?
No, my father's name is Grant, but I'm just saying that.
No, but he was born with that name?
He was born with that name. But Gislason, our Icelandic last name, is a third generation, is a heritage name. So they started calling me Raka Gisladottir. They hypernated, they're like, but you're a woman, so it's not Gislason, you're not a boy. So they automatically changed my name during radio interviews when they were doing kind of a press thing for me. And they're like, welcome up here, Raka Gisladottir. Like they're talking as if I was first generation born in Reykjavik. Yeah, and no one's going to be able to find me. They're all looking for this artist. I was born and raised in Iceland. And I went, okay. I know it's cool, but it was just very funny.
Was your father born there?
No, he wasn't. He was born in Canada, in a little Icelandic town called Gimli. But my great grandmother is from Eastern Iceland and Gabakagerði, which is you have to take a plane ride. And
so you have relatives there?
Oh, I do. I stayed with my fourth and fifth cousins when I was there, and I was going to go visit, but then we had a thing called COVID in 2020. I want to go back.
Wow!
But I still remember a lot of Icelandic, and it was wild going there.
You know where Amy's joy is there? She has sheep, and she makes, you know what? She makes wool. She's a knitter, and she knits these gorgeous things. Yeah, and she makes her own wool.
I learned a little bit of knitting when I was
there. You should see the stuff she does.
I bet.
Yeah,
I actually saw myself. If I was hanging out there longer, I would have really got into.
Yeah, she started doing it years ago. Actually, she laughs about that. I taught her how to knit and purl. And I know we were here one day and she was a kid. She said, Mom, do you know how to knit? And I said, oh, everybody knows how to knit. And I put the thing on and so she started knitting, and we laugh about that. She had a thing that was like 10 feet long, Like she just kept knitting and knitting. We didn't know how to cast off or do any of that. I just knit, right?
Just kept
But
going.
she learned how to knit just by knitting this big long thing that she.
That's funny. Thanks for a tiny little tangent.
Yeah.
Just shooting the breeze here.
Yeah, that's what we should do. And I think that's how you learn anything about life.
Yeah.
Is if you sit down with somebody and how long have I known you? For a billion years, and I never knew all that stuff about you. So there you go.
There you go.
I know.
We're having fun history lessons today. I'm very curious. I'm well aware, and a lot of people are aware of your band Skylark. We've discussed a little bit about that. Now there was a Walk of Fame, right?
Yeah, we just
Right?
did
You just
that.
had that. So cool. And you had this song that's had a lot of notoriety and success, but you're a songwriter. And I know as us writers, we've got other passion projects and things that don't necessarily see the radio worthy or deemed by labels light of day. What are some of your favorite? I'm wondering if you have any personal projects or creative endeavors that you're particularly proud of in your writing.
I got to write with Mike McDonald,
Woo!
and I got
Gotta love his voice. Butterscotch.
Butterscotch. And I got to write with Bill Champlin, who I just love on his single album. The Sons of Champlin were a very famous band out of the San Francisco area. It's funny when Donnie Gerard, when we were putting Skylark together, we told everyone to bring your favorite artist and play what kind of music you're into. And we'll see if we can come up with some kind of So Donnie brought the Sons of Champlin, which are a bunch of white guys but very funky. And so I got to write with him on his first single album. He asked David to produce his single album. So I got to write with him, which was cool. Brenda Russell, who wrote the music for The Color Purple. I know. And she and I have written, and I've written with David and Jay Graydon. And I like I said, I'm just one of those people that happen to be in the right place at the right time. I've never thought of myself as greatly talented. I'm always in awe of people who can really sing and really belt. I've survived as a singer, but I'm a stylist, I would say. I'm certainly not a Celine Dion. And if I was, I'm sure Skylark. David said, the first thing David Foster said when we put Skylark together was, oh, by the way, I want 3 singers. I was like, oh, I thought I was going to be the singer. And he said, you're good, but I want better. And he was honest with me. And that's once again, you have a choice. You can be the victim. Oh, gee, but you consider the source. It depends on who tells you that news, right? And I listened to him, and we auditioned a lot of singers. Joni Taylor was in the band for a while. And Pat Hendricks was the drummer, but he didn't think that we had a future. So he was a studio guy and making a ton of money. And he just said, I'm not giving that up. We tried a lot of singers, and I always wanted Donnie Gerard. And Donnie was on the road with a group called the Night Train Review. And he was out all the time. But then he came back. He didn't want to be with that band anymore. And it just so happened we were looking for a singer. So we had Donnie and we had me, and now we needed a third. And my sister auditioned. And
Your sister.
my half sister, I have Gordon Cook's daughter. Okay.
Got it.
And she auditioned. And David liked her singing and liked the way we blended together, all 3 of us. So when we left Vancouver to go and record Skylark, my sister Carolyn Cook was in that band. And she lasted about 2 or 3 months. And the reason she got fired, I'm pleading the 5th. I'll tell you later in front.
Cool. There's the after hours conversation here. So you did it. Yeah. When I think of different people you got to write with and other projects that maybe didn't get as widespread recognition, but just there's a lot of
I write with Niels Peterson in this town.
that.
Really nice little songs. Who I'm writing right now with Carl, there are 2 black guys in Skylark, and the other black guy Carl. He was in the band before Skylark I was in, called Sweet Beaver. And Carl and I, that was a 7-piece horn band and all that. And Carl was in that band. When Carolyn left the band, I wanted Carl. When you look at, that's another thing. If you go on YouTube and look at, if you put in Skylark Woodstock, I'm about 8 months pregnant singing Woodstock. And the two guys are singing. They did something that they had never done before. They had split a screen in 3. They had never done that. That was a big deal. And I think maybe Gene Weed, who produced the Academy Awards, directed our first video. And we had no budget. So there's pigeons and wildflowers were pansies in somebody's garden or something. It was just ridiculous. And everything was on the fly and everything was on the cheap. We didn't have any money. All we had was we were all hungry. We all wanted it really bad.
Creative, shoestring budget.
No kidding. And there's 2 videos on Skylark, but the hilarious one is the one with the wildflower with the pansies and everything.
I'll have to look that up.
Oh, but the split screen is me in the middle and Carl and Donnie on each side, and they're singing above me in full voice. It is so good that this is 50 years old. So I'm happy about that. We just got a star on the Walk of Fame, by the way, Skylark. It only took 50 years, but we got there.
Hey, you know what? It's pretty remarkable feat. It's really cool.
And better late than never.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it. I never even thought about it. That's the single. And if I had not sung background on that song, I would not have had that platinum record. And Myra, Donnie's wife, reminded me that she said, "Where's your gold record?" Because you go gold before you go platinum. But we never got a gold one either. That's something I guess we'll get a gold one. Hopefully before I die, Capitol Records. You have to pay, by the way, you buy them. If you want if you have you have to buy that. David bought all of those for all the people and every single person besides David and that were in that band are all dead.
You guys are the 2 surviving
We're the
members.
only 2 surviving members of Skylark, which is so sad. But their sons and daughters got the records, so that's
the legacy lives on. Just
it's
very special.
Yeah.
You mentioned some people who opened up doors and invited you. The guy that went to Vancouver. Who are some of the significant mentors that you would attribute maybe in the shaping of your career along the way? Anyone we haven't?
I would say Ronnie Hawkins would be a huge mentor to me because he taught me that he is one of those kind of guys that he grew up with Elvis and knew Elvis. They're 2 days apart, their birthday, and Jerry Lee Lewis. And if you go to YouTube, there's another thing on YouTube and look up Ronnie Hawkins' 60th birthday or 65th birthday or something. It's at Massey Hall. Jeff Healey is playing on it. Levon Hill, just the most incredible band. And Ronnie Hawkins taught me that he was the guy that said, you get press and people read it, but the next day they wrap their fish in it and throw it in the garbage. It's just news. It's just press. And when you join Ronnie Hawkins' band, David and I joined. David was 21 and I was 28, and we just joined Ronnie Hawkins. To tell you the truth, I didn't even know who Ronnie Hawkins was. I'd never even heard of him, right? So anyways, we joined the band and we went to we sit down with the band and he doesn't say that much, but he says, "Okay, boys," he said, "I got 2 things that I always tell my musicians." Now, his first band was The Band with Robbie Robinson. Oh, that was his first band. And then his second band was the Full Tilt Boogie Band, which was Janice's band. So Ronnie always puts killer bands together. So David and I are in the band and a whole bunch of really good players. And anyways, he sat down with us and he said, I got two things to say to you. The first thing is, it's better to remain silent and be thought a fool than speak and remove all doubt. And that's what he said. That's the first thing he said to us. He said, just think about it. It's better to remain when you're in a room of heavyweights and big time people, and you're going to meet a whole bunch of people in your life. Unless you know what you're talking about, shut up. Okay. Listen. So I've always paid attention to that. If you're in a room with a bunch of people you don't know, just find somebody that you might have something to say with, but I'm that person. And the other thing he said was, which I think is mandatory, never believe your own press. Okay. And now that's what happens to a lot of people. They start reading what the people are saying about them and they believe it if they're like omnipotent or something. And so I took a lot of advice from him and I watched how he worked people and how he talked to people and the way he treated everyone the same. He was also a guy that would light up a joint in an elevator. He was just an amazing human being. And my dear friend, and he and his wife, they were married for 64 years, Ronnie and his wife, just fabulous human beings. And so I've been very lucky to have mentors like that. People that there's not a lot of people because I'm so old that I'm now the person that is mentoring. But even back then, I think that we were all helping each other, working together. And now some of those people like Brenda Russell and David Foster, and they've all gone on to bigger and better. And a lot of people are still in the business, but they've maintained a really good life without the fame and fortune. And that can happen too. So I'm looking at your thing there, the top 3 favorite books.
Yeah, I love to ask everybody this. And just before I ask you that question, you already dropped a whole bunch of words of wisdom and shared from previous mentors, but is there anything that you feel like any final thoughts or words of inspiration? Maybe, God, I'm just thinking about with your journey.
I always
love so much gumption going for it.
I think the thing is that you keep the vision, you keep that thing, hold the vision and trust the journey.
Like bumper sticker.
That's it. Yeah. Always remember what your main goal in life is and what makes you happy. Your lifespan is this big, really. When you think about it, eternity in life, you're this big. So in that little span of life, don't hesitate ever to do the things that you're driven to do. If it's in your heart if you want to go to Italy, that's where you should go. But then I always think my daughter always has said, my oldest daughter, who is like my best friend, by the way, she and I talk all the time about traveling and going around the world and doing all these things. But unfortunately, she has a job. You can't just take off and leave because if you want to do Italy and stuff, you need a month.
And we're trying to swing easily with 3 weeks.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? But if it's in your heart, and even if it's not, even if you want to plant a garden, whatever it is, you should just follow your heart. You're always being told what to do. And I know people think that's nuts sometimes. And I say, don't you ever hear that voice? Because I hear it all the time. And I always talk to it. Now people think I'm really nuts because I'll be walking around and my voice will say, get the broom and sweep the floor, right? Look at your floor. It's filthy. And that voice to me is why I do everything maybe that's why I'm crazy and have things in order, but I listen to my voice. I listen because it's your conscience, it's your guide. It's
about like an internal compass.
Exactly. Or it's the people that have lived it's your people, your past guiding you through your life and telling you, don't go over there, don't do this, don't do that. And that voice, I know that sounds to a lot of people like, God, you're loony. If you're hearing voices, I don't mean I have a voice in my ear, but I do what I'm told. If somebody said, if to me, get up and do the dishes, or it's time for you to have a shower, or whatever. My whole life has been, I don't feel like it right now.
Right.
I don't want to do that right now. I'd rather do this. I don't do that. I get it done. And I think that's the way to do it. Being a procrastinator and putting things off, one day you're going to be very sorry that you didn't do what you wanted to do because it goes by that fast.
I think those are very solid words of wisdom.
I look at myself when I get close, I think, who is this old woman? Like, really, it went by so fast to me that sometimes that's why I don't spend a lot of time looking at myself, because then I realize, or in pictures, you think you look a certain way and someone shows you a picture of you and you go, oh my God, do I look like that? Because in my mind's eye, I'm not old. I don't.
Our soul, I believe that it is an eternal thing. So we're just alive with like
Absolutely.
forever energy, whatever our belief systems being and what we use for eternal,
Oh,
but that we are ever existing eternally energy.
yeah,
And
I
so when we
agree.
look at the physical, which time existing, then we could see the effects of that starting as we get winter, we get different seasons and months. And wow, it's a reflection. There is such a thing as a timeline and what do I
Yeah,
want to accomplish? So why sit around waiting and thinking that it's going
exactly.
to be the right time or
Hey, I don't ever think that putting things off it works. I think that you regret it at some point in your life. Yeah.
I was thinking on it because I wanted to ask you to for this interview for some months and I kept overthinking the whole process. And it was like, just give her a message. Just why are you over this? Just do it now. Do it now. Life is short. Just do it
Yeah,
now.
absolutely.
And I'm like, why am I overthinking this? And sometimes that can happen. We can get these impulses. I'm wanting to launch this podcast. I'm really excited about it. And just, it feels just special being able to learn through other people within my life, more of their backstory and words of wisdom and whatever the legacy is theirs. This is so exciting. Just don't wait. I'm not waiting. So this is
No,
happening.
listen, this is such a good idea for you because you're so knowledgeable about music and what it's like to fight and be in the rat race of trying to survive in the music business. Do you know Jim Burns?
Yeah.
He would be a good person for this.
Okay.
I'll get him to do this.
All right.
Hear me, Jim Burns?
Calling you.
Calling you out right now. Oh, I know, seriously, this would be maybe even my pal Bev.
I love anything to do with people who've been around with their walks of life, of sharing their nuggets, because stories are so powerful. And I want to inspire other people in the way that I've been inspired by.
You know how I know Beverly?
No.
She was a hawk. She was with Ronnie Hawkins.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So what you say, Beverly, are we calling out Beverly? Like
Beverly D'Angelo.
Okay.
Okay. No, my friend and longtime friend had no clue who Beverly D'Angelo is. You might not know her either. You might know her as Mrs. Griswold on the vacation movies, but she's got a list this long of movies that she's done. Tons of movies.
So many cool people, so many wonderful stories.
She'd be very happy to sit down with you. I'm sure if she's not on a project, she would be very happy to talk to you.
All right.
Yeah, we'll get her.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So what are your top 3 books for inspiration?
I'm going to be totally honest with you and tell you that because I'm dyslexic, I don't read. And I know I listen to things. I don't, and I haven't done, I got so frustrated with the fact that even reading this, when I read that, because it's in yellow, it's really good for me to see that in yellow, right? But I think that all of us, I think the most important book I ever read in my life was a book by Gail Sheehy called Passages. And it tells us that in every 7 years, we go through a molecular and a microbiotic and a every 7 years. And you think about it, from 1 to 7, that's your baby time. And then from when now you're starting 8 to 14, right? That's your puberty time. And then 21 is the next one. We go in 7-year stages. And how old are you now?
How young am I?
Yeah.
That's all you ask in Hollywood. What's my acting age?
No, you're 3 years into a 7-year stage. So this is I'll tell you about this swing from 35 to 40. I'm so good at math. 35
You got me
7.
thinking.
So no, 42 is the next one, right?
Now you're this. So ignore my laptop.
Okay. So here's the deal. This is the hottest time for you in your lifetime. This 7-year cycle that you're going through, this is when you decide the path of your life. And that's the way I looked at it. At 35, that's when I decided I had to be out of my marriage. As much as I loved him, as wonderful as our relationship was, I knew that I wasn't.
I'm talking about.
I've only been married once. Okay. And I would never do it again. It was his idea.
David's idea.
Oh, absolutely. We were together for 2 years before we got married. And I did not want to get married. We got married in Fort Lauderdale. We were on the road. And it was my birthday. And he said, "What do you want for your birthday?" And I said, "I don't know. Does it really matter?" And he said, "Let's get married." And what? And I said, "Really? And we're on the road, your family there." I said, "No, that's why I want to get married. I don't want let's just do it." So we got married in Fort Lauderdale. And when it was over, and here's another thing, men don't leave. If a man leaves you, it's because he's got somebody else. Men will stay in a relationship forever, whether they're happy or not, because that's just the way they are. But if they leave you, it's because somebody's waiting. I'm telling you, it's the truth. Men do not leave unless there's something to leave for. They don't leave. And David was gone constantly. He was that was the busiest time of his life when he was just getting established. And I had given up my career to be a mom and stay at home. And 4 years into it, I just said, this is not, I'm sorry if everyone thinks I'm a terrible human being, but being a mother 24 hours a day is not, it's not that fulfilling to me. I need a purpose. And I know that a lot of people, "Oh my God, how can she admit that? How can she say that?" I loved my children and I loved having them in my life when they were there. But
I think it's becoming a little less taboo
Oh,
talking about it.
yeah.
But there are a lot of women that I do know that are hungry for intelligent conversation and they want
Absolutely.
stimulation. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. My mom was a master juggler. She was like octopus woman. But I just remember being in the studio and she'd be recording all these vocals and we'd be in there in the mix. And I loved seeing her still pursue her music, and I didn't ever hold it against her. I never felt a lack of love. I never felt that I wasn't getting attention. And I'm grateful because that was my personal experience. Is she showed me, no, you can do something that you're passionate. Well, no, it was for my whole time. Like she was still pursuing the music. She was on Star Search when I was 6 weeks old. Right.
Right.
So
Right.
she, okay, I just had a baby. Let's fly down to Los Angeles and I'll bring her with me versus let me heal up. Let's see if maybe the next season. No, she was always still going for it, pursuing that. She had her passions and she wanted to find a way to journey of being a stellar mom, which she is, and still have her creative pursuits that were important to her. But she very much valued, like she could have chosen not to have kids. We talked about this and I was like, no, I wanted to be a mom and I didn't want to wait. But she also wasn't planning on putting her career fully on the burner. And that was just really cool to be able to see that because I plan on having a couple kids, but I still am pursuing my creative pursuits and plan on being that.
But also, let's just talk about your dad for a minute.
Yeah.
David Foster came from a very traditional, there were 7 kids in his family.
Right.
He was the only boy, and his mom was very strict. and she took care and ran the house. And that was his example of how it should be. A
Right.
woman stays home, she runs the house, she takes care of everything. All I have to do is come home and eat and sleep and go back to work again. That was his thing. He didn't really take care of the house or
Right.
Amy, or he had nothing to do with, because he was traditional.
Right.
So me having a job or having anything, but Bill Champlin and his wife moved next door to us. So I got to write with Bill Champlin because we were living right next door, right? But I'd never been a housewife. I'd never been married, Sadie married lady. I'd never done that before. I was 30 when I got married,
Mhm.
30. And Amy was born when I was 31. So I was excited about being a stay-at-home mom and cooking and doing all that. But that wore off in about 10 minutes. It's how I just never could understand how somebody could be fulfilled folding laundry and washing the floors and stuff.
I think it's individual
Yeah.
and that it's not a right or a wrong kind of thing. I do believe in stability. We're getting into this
Yeah.
of wanting to provide that because I did have that when I was growing up. And that is something I believe can find a way to still be creative and pursue a career and provide stability. There are ways about doing that. So there's so many things that you had to go through from being a mom at 16, 17 years old in a time where that was so scandalous, and how you navigated, became a mother again. It's like at 31, but now you're in the career where things are moving. It sounds you had a lot of you found your footing and your balance of being able to integrate both
I
in the best way that you
And
know
the best
how.
way that I knew how. And I was just an old barb dame. I didn't know anything about the studios. I knew not. I hated being in the studio. It was so confining to me and so boring to go and sing the same part over and over. And of course, back then, I'm sure David Foster would never do it now. But for me, I'd get in the studio. It's why I don't even want to sing. I took all the joy and love out of it. I'd get in and I'd sing, and he'd say, "A little more Dusty Springfield. Can we get a little more Dusty Springfield? A little more Carole King here. A little Carole King."
Oh, yeah.
So I was so confused, and I felt so inferior all the time being BJ Cook. I thought, obviously, BJ Cook isn't so great. It was either Dusty Springfield or Carole King or somebody else. I can't remember right now, but he used those people always as who I should
Vocal
sound.
production,
Yeah, who I
guidance.
should sound, try and sound more like her and
And
get
play-
yeah. And that was very confining and really, and then of course, standing next to the great Donnie Girard with that voice of, was like standing next to Donny Hathaway. And he was all singing, like every time he opened his mouth, it was like just this, it was like this breath of magic would come out of him. And all the people in the studio, oh man, that's so cool, so cool. And then I would do my part. And David was like, "Could you sound a little more like Dusty Springfield? Could you give me a little more?" So I said, "Oh God, this is hell, hell for me, hell." But you can tell on the album, it's primarily Donnie. And with us singing duets, I think I might do one or two solos on it, but it's mostly Donnie Girard. And believe me, I am 100% in favor of that. It doesn't ever make me feel. My cousin, no, who was it? Just somebody recently listened to the whole album and said, "My God, you're such a good singer. There should have been more of you on that album." There was exactly the right amount of me being on the album. And I'm very happy. I have it in my car. I play it. I have it on CD, and I put it on the other day. I hadn't heard it at somebody bootlegged putting there's 2 albums, by the
Okay.
way, and they're both on this one disc. And I listened to both of them and I thought, wow, I'd sit and listen to this album. It's really it's good.
Timeless.
We made good music. If you only ever have to have one hit in your life, at least it's a timeless song. It's in the Hall of Fame and now we're immortalized in cement on Granville Street.
This has been so much fun. And
Oh, for
I'm
me
sure you guys
too.
it's been so much fun. And I'm just for sharing all your wonderful
Oh,
stories and
I have a million of them.
oh yeah, well
6 months, you can come back.
where can listeners find some more information on you?
I'm really happy to do this. And I never think of myself as anything but old and that was then and
Dirt.
now is now,
Oh, dirt.
right? So I'm very happy. I've been asked by a few people to do podcasts and especially since the Walk of Fame, they've made that. That's cool. I feel like a celebrity, you know.
Is there anywhere we can go in here or connect with you, or is that a thing, or just
I don't know how.
do you have like a website or?
No, I should have a website, shouldn't I?
Oh.
I don't. I don't know. I don't
Well,
even.
you just enjoy this negative today's episode and go and whenever.
If you ever want to talk to me, talk to her. That's what you do.
And listen to some of these really cool songs. I'm going to go through. I was trying to do on my Spotify today, finding Tupac's sample. All right. I'm like, it's just so cool.
Valerie sent me, who does the manager. She's the manager she takes care of all the publishing for Skylark. And she wants, somewhere in my pile, I have all the people that have recorded Wildflower. And I think about how great that is because it still generates about $60,000 a year. Oh, I know. It's pretty amazing because people love it. They continue to record it. One of my favorite singers, Lisa Fisher is her name. She sang with Luther I think her name is Lisa Fisher. God, I can't remember anything. But she recorded it. And that's how I got to know and meet Luther Vandross. I was in Toronto and he was playing in Toronto and I got invited because of Skylark and Wildflower to come to his concert. And we talked a long time about Donnie Gerard and how much he loved Donnie and he loved our version of it the best. And she treats it like an anthem for women, right? It's her. So one of the best, if you haven't ever heard her, you've got to hear her. She's one of those killer dames that knock your socks off. And she recorded it and made it a big hit for girls, right? The only way musicians or writers make money, by the way, is from their publishing and people pay to listen to their music.
I know, and unless people are purchasing
and not paying anything.
I know.
And that's why we don't have
radio songs.
And I know that's why we don't have an industry anymore. It's just over. So that part of it. But we're finding a way that, like I said, this underground movement with all this TikTok stuff and guys having their little rooms and
still getting my bearings on TikTok.
No, you'd be great on TikTok. No, I'm not kidding you. If people like you and you can go viral overnight. If you happen to write a song or talk about something that is relevant and people love you, you can go viral. And once that happens, then everybody's interested. It's as simple as that. It's just bizarre. Like Jordan told me that that like one of his artists is famous. It's this guy named, I think his name is Jeffrey Porter or Gregory Porter. Have you ever heard that?
Maybe.
Oh my God. You know what? I cried when I heard this guy sing. He sings so well. And he's one of the guys that Jordan was talking about. They have such a huge following underground that all he has to do is say, I'm playing in Vancouver. And he's sold out in 10 minutes. And he makes all the money. There's nobody to pay. And it's him. I'm very happy to hear that it's still working, that there are concerts that there is an underground movement. If you would like, I will turn you on to Jordan. And Jordan John, you have to look him up too.
Okay.
I'll tell you how good he is. When Aretha last played in Vancouver or in Toronto, she opened for the Toronto Jazz Festival. outdoors. And that's 22,000 people that just crowd all outside, everywhere, ever. And she never has an opening act. She doesn't need one. She doesn't want one. She asked Jordan to open for her.
Okay, now I have to listen.
Okay, no, he is drop dead gorgeous. Jordan, I love you. And he calls me, Prakash makes his children call me Aunt. So I'm Aunt B, and I have been forever. But when we went to see him with Aretha, I was terrified. I thought they're all here to see Aretha, and he's going to come out. He plays guitar better than just about anybody and plays drums. He played drums with the Lincolns, his dad's band. So he's just a brilliant musician. He got 2 or 3 encores when he was playing with Aretha. I'm not kidding.
All right.
Oh, no.
Well, now I'm intrigued.
Oh, no. He would be somebody I'd like to just have you talk to and introduce you through email, and just you can tell him what you do and what you're into, and he does everything. I don't know if I should tell, but I think it's a great idea. So for $25K, Jordan takes your material, and listen, for 25 grand, he does all of it himself. He does all the tracks. He'll sing all the background. He'll do everything, and you just put your vocals on.
Yes.
That's what he's doing, and that's how he's making him money. Like, he would come to you and say, you don't need a band, you don't need anything. You and I will work together on this project, and we'll do an album together.
I'm writing custom songs for
Yeah.
companies, and I'm doing music production. During COVID, I finally gave myself the time, the
Good
permission
for you.
to start learning recording engineering, because I was always, while I'm an instrumentalist, a musician, singer, songwriter, composer, I had the weak link was not being able to hit record and capture all of my ideas. So I paired up with a lot of top producers in Nashville and Los Angeles, and we would knock things out with our combined talents very quickly. But so we're wrapping this up. This was part of the challenge as well, because politics got involved, which is a different one. I will maybe share some insights on that, a separate podcast. But I wanted to be a one-stop shop and have all of the control now over my creative.
Exactly.
Right? And it's not that I won't pair up with other talented individuals or work for hire.
But you don't need to.
No. And so I've been having a lot of fun. I got lost when I can. It was like 5 hours of music production, and I'm roping my parents and teaching them how to do it. Getting my dad to go record electric guitar. So it's giving me the platform for legacy projects, me to have freedom. And then when I'm ready, that sounds very cool. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, that's what he's doing. He's going to people, artists are coming to him. And he says, for $25,000 period, I'll do, and it takes him it's no.
When you know how to do it,
you know how to do it,
you can execute it.
You can execute it. It's not going to be like painstaking.
It's a fraction of the cost. It used to be $300K minimum for people to go into the studio.
No,
big
absolutely.
Big album.
It's a whole new ball game.
It's a whole new. You know what? There's a lot of ingenuity, and people are finding their way and doing some very outside of the industry, the traditionalist path.
Yeah,
so
there is
for
no
anybody who's listening, I like when no, there isn't, but they're syncing film and TV still. People who are being very creative. I've met lots of individuals that you wouldn't even know their names, and they're making 7 figures a year just by still following their path of writing songs, being on stage. It's very inspiring, and I really just love when we're talking about your whole history and your journey today. I do see you in a pioneering light of what you have shared and done and your path of pursuing your heart's desire in music. And life is very short. You know what? Thank you for today, joining us in today's episode. I hope you feel as uplifted and encouraged as I do. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the Bravery Path podcast so you can stay in the loop. With new episodes dropping every week, there's always more inspiration waiting for you. And remember to be brave, because life, as BJ said, is short. So let's not play small, and let's go and chase those dreams, because we're worth it.
Peace out.